Today we're starting finishing work on our blanket statement blanket. If you're not familiar with the Blanket Statement Blanket Club, you can click the link below for more information regarding that and how to sign up. Today we want to show you how to do single crochet stitch edging around the borders of your blanket statement square. And I've got a finished one here just to show you. You want to make sure that you've got a nice even edge on all of your squares because we're going to be seaming all of the squares together. For every stitch that's on this square, we want to have a stitch on this square as well. And it's going to be the same when we flip it that way too. So Erica and I are going to demonstrate how to do this. One other thing that I'd like to mention, I've got a couple different crochet hooks here to get started. Erica's gauge happens to be right on. Mine's a little loose. And Anne's pattern calls for a size 7 needle. With a little bit of experimentation, we've decided to go down a hook size when you do your edging. Erica would be using a 6, so I'm going to give that one over to her. This obviously is something that's trial and error. You may not use a 6, you may use a 7. You'll want to check that before you start. So Erica's going to start with the right corner of the right side of her fabric. This is going to make it a little easier to do your stitches. We start with the right corner so that we can have a real clean and even edge to work into, and then we'll transition down this edge. So to begin, we're going to attach our contrasting yarn. And she's just going to hold it really loosely behind the fabric. We're not tying any knots.
So do I go in from the front of the fabric or in from the back of the
Go
fabric?
in from the front of the fabric, and she's going to pick up 2 loops. And these 2 loops are one bound off stitch, and that stitch actually looks like a stockinette V. So now you're just going to lay the yarn over the hook and pull it through that loop, and that's going to attach it for you.
And then we'll leave this in later?
So that can just hang for now.
Okay. And then go back through the next?
And then you're going to go into the very next stitch. And like I say, this is the bound off stitch. So she's looking for those 2 loops again that look like the stockinette V.
Yep, so I have 2 loops.
Perfect. And she's wrapping the yarn around. Why don't you do that one more time to show? She's wrapping the yarn around from the back to the front. And she's got a little bit of tension here in the index finger. And then you're going to have 2 loops on the hook, just like you see here. And in order to finish off this single crocheted stitch, she's going to do 1 more loop on the hook. And that loop's going to be pulled through both of the loops. And now we have 1 loop remaining on the hook. We've just done 1 crocheted stitch.
So I'm going through the next bound stitch. Round. I have 2 stitches.
Yep.
I'll make my 3rd.
Perfect. So one thing to pay attention of as she keeps going through is just that tension. Since we're working on the bound off edge, it's really easy to see that for every stitch in the edge, we're going to put a crocheted stitch in. And I can see she's working with her index finger to kind of ease the yarn in or tighten it a little bit as she goes. And why don't you lay this down for a second? She's got a couple stitches in. You can see she's got a real nice and even edge that's beginning. And on the back, it's reversible. You want to make sure that that crocheted edging is reversible because all of our blanket squares are reversible.
One thing I'm noticing as I start this is the Stone Soup DK, and I do notice you just want to be careful as you start not to break the ply.
Yes, make sure you pick up all parts of the stitch. That's important.
And if you do, it's okay. You can pull back. And we can show you right now how to pull back. So I'll just take the hook out. And that pulled back one stitch. There's two, so no problem. You probably will have to pull back a couple times.
So I'm going to continue to work to the edge, and I just wanted to show you guys that I hold my hook a little differently from how Erica does. And we both actually hold our hook entirely different from how Anne does. And I'm telling you this because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you hold the hook, however you create the finished stitch, as long as it's a finished single crochet stitch, that's what's most important. What I've actually done too, a little secret, I've switched my crochet hook to a smaller size. I'm actually using a size 5. I tend to knit looser, which means I tend to crochet a little looser. So to keep everything even, I went down a size. I'll show you this. There's still a couple stitches where I look like I'm a little looser, and if that's the case, you just pull it back and you'd re-crochet it again. Take you to the end. Turning the corner is going to be a little different, but it's important to show because you're going to want to make sure you turn your corners the same on all of your squares. We experimented a little bit and decided that we wanted to put 2 extra stitches into each corner. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the desired effect for you, but that's what worked for us. So I'm right here at my last stitch. I'm going to crochet that one. And then to add in 2 extra stitches, I'm going to actually go back in to where I just came out of. And I'm just going to do single crochet 2 more times. That was 1. This is 2. I'll lay this down so you guys can see. You'll be able to see the corner as we go on to the other edge. And to do this edge, we're not looking for stockinette V's anymore. We're actually looking for ladders. And if any of you guys are familiar with seaming, you'll know that when you do a lot of seaming, you work with stockinette V's or you work with ladders. And I'm going to pull apart the fabric a little bit and see if I can show you what a ladder is. I've got these 2 stitches here, and do you see these 2? 1, 2. What I want to do is skip 1, 2, and go into the hole right beside that second one.
So why are we skipping one on this?
We're skipping to ease the stitches in. One thing that we found while we were piecing these together was that if we go through every stitch, it's going to create a lettuce effect. And we'll show you what that looks like. It's very ripply, very ruffly. It's not going to lay nice and even when you piece together all of your squares. So to ensure that we've got everything laying together really nice and flat, we're going to skip every other stitch. So here we've got 2 ladders again, 1, 2. I'm going into that hole right beside the second one, and I'm doing single crochet. I'll do a couple more and then I'm going to hand it over. 1, 2, I'm going into that hole. And I'm picking up everything too. That's important to note. It's going to look like you have 2 loops on the needle again, just like it did when you did your top edging. Lay this down so you can see. Got a real nice corner.
Okay, so I'm going to switch to my needle or hook.
And you're looking for the 2 ladders, going into the hole right beside the second one. Now on average, what we also noticed was that your crochet edging on the top and bottom of your squares is going to be about 28 single crochet stitches, give or take. You'll want to experiment with your squares to see if that's the desired stitch amount for you. And then on either side of the long sides of your squares, you're looking at approximately 35 stitches. Now this doesn't include every 2 stitches that we've also placed for turning our corners. One thing to note is that you make sure that every square has the exact amount of crocheted stitches. Whatever your total amount is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be the same as ours, but you just want to make sure that every square has the exact amount of chain stitches on it. That's going to help you. Let's see. We can line this up to demonstrate. That's going to help you see every stitch that we're actually going to weave together. For every stitch that's over here, we want to take a stitch over here, and it's going to seam together really beautifully that way.
So when we're doing, like on our side, we're doing every other stitch.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean for every square on the side you would do every other stitch?
Right, because you want to make sure that your stitches are lining up. You want your crocheted stitch on this one to match up with this one. So if I'm 5 stitches in on my left square, I want to make sure that I'm seaming it to 5 stitches in on my right square too. You want everything to line up really nice and clean.
So I'm going to lay this down and just check how it's looking. And it looks pretty flat. There's a little bit of rippling. Is that going to be okay?
If you don't like it, you can always take it out. That's the good thing about crochet. The rippling doesn't look bad at all. It actually looks very good. And one thing to help get rid of that a little bit more is just go back and steam block it after you've finished all of your edges. That'll definitely clean up the rippling effect. So as you can see, we've almost finished all of our crocheted edging around this square. And Erica's right up here at the corner. We want to show you one more time how you're going to create the corner and then how you're going to finish off the final stitch of the edging.
So I'm looking for letters.
You're looking for letters again.
One more stitch.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then into that stitch, once you finish it, into that stitch that you just came out of, you actually want to create 2 more single crochet stitches. And that's what's going to create the corner. So there was one, and we've got one more. Okay. And then, so to finish it off, Erica's going to put a slip stitch into the first stitch that she created for the edging. And by doing so, she's still working with the contrasting yarn. She's picking up the 2 loops of that crocheted stitch, wrapping the yarn around from back to front, and she's going to pull that loop through both of the loops that were already on the hook. And then I always pull that loop kind of loose so I can see, yep. And then we'll cut the yarn. You can keep pulling.
Pull it out?
Yep.
All the way out?
Yep. And then we'll just weave that end in later, and we've got 1 square finished. For more information regarding any other videos or tutorials with Blanket Statement Club, you can visit our YouTube channel and subscribe, or go to our BNK Ravelry group thread. And for information regarding all materials used in this tutorial, you can visit our website at www.knitspot.com.